Hello everyone. We're discussing about inquiry training model for teacher section. And in the previous lecture, we were discussing the various steps or the syntax of this particular model, wherein we saw phase one, that is confrontation with the puzzling situation, which includes explaining the inquiry process and presenting the discrete event. Then phase two, which is data gathering, verification, which again involves two steps: verifying the nature of objects and verifying the occurrence of a discrete event. Then phase three, that is data gathering experiment, which again had steps, three steps. Then phase four, organizing the data and formulating an explanation. And phase five, that is analysis of inquiry process. And I think we stopped discussing on the particular topic on classroom environment, and we saw how and what kind of an environment we need to create in an inquiry training in a class where inquiry training model will be used. So let us move ahead and discuss something more about inquiry training model. So after discussing the syntax, or what we can call steps or phases, we need to know about the social system. Now this term social system, syntax, okay, then principles of reaction, then effects, the improving nurturement and instructional effects would be common for all the modules, all the three modules that we have in our syllabus. So we need to know what exactly is social system and what does it mean when we have to discuss about it in the context of this particular module. So as you can read here that it describes the role of the teacher and students with regard to their relationship. So exactly how a teacher should behave and how a student should behave in a classroom and how they need to interact with each other while making use of inquiry training model in the classroom. Now we'll first discuss teacher's role. First point is he or she selects the problem situation or the difficulty rate. As we all are aware that in order to begin with a topic with the use of inquiry training model, it's important that the teacher is able to select a problem situation or a difficult event on which the entire model would work on. Then X is a referee in the inquiry. Okay, teacher's role here is to act as a referee in the inquiry, as in the teacher is not a person who would be helping them to solve the problem, instead just a guide who would give them a direction to follow and give them some hints and clues in order to come up with a solution to the problem situation that he or she has posed. Third one is to respond to students' inquiry. Now, while the inquiry process is going on, there are many queries that the students will come up with. So it's very important that you should be in a position to help them and should be there with them while the process is going on in order to respond to their queries. Fourth one, it probes with necessary information. Now, whenever they are in need of any information or resources during the inquiry process or while the inquiry process is going on, you should be there with them to provide that necessary information. So this was all about teacher's role in an inquiry training classroom. I think this briefs up what exactly a teacher needs to do. It might not have covered all the points, but yes, in a brief manner, it is something that you are supposed to do in a class where inquiry training model is implemented. Few more are helps beginners to focus on the inquiry process. Now there will be students who must not have used this particular model, or maybe you are using it for the first time in a classroom, so introducing that concept or introducing that model to the students for the first time. So you need to teach them to focus on the steps of the procedure that needs to be followed while carrying out any research or carrying out any inquiry using that particular model. So your role is to help them in the inquiry process. Facilitates discussion of the problem situation among students. So you also need to initiate that discussion among students about the problem that it will be posing in front of them. The next point is acts as a recorder. So as a teacher, you need to guide them in the process, as well as you need to keep on recording the levels or the stages or the phases that they cross while the inquiry process is going on, because since inquiry process or inquiry training model would work when you allow your students to work in a group. So you need to keep a record of how each group is going ahead with the activity, what are the difficulties that they faced, because it can help improve your probing of the situation, or sometimes it can also help you in changing the situation maybe the next time you use it. So it's very important that you keep record of all the activities and how they go about the activity while they make use of inquiry training model in the classroom. Fourth is to keep track of the inquiry process. So it is one and the same thing when you act as a recorder. In a way, you're keeping track of the inquiry process. So you need to be updated, and you need to keep on asking the students where exactly they have reached in the inquiry process and accordingly guide them. Fifth point is to help students to arrive at explanation. Sometimes when a discrepant event is posed to them, most of the time would go in understanding the discrepant event. So a lot of thought process goes into that. So whenever they are at the end of that process, you can help them or assist them to arrive at explanations, as there can be some instances wherein they would not be able to give the correct explanation, or they might have worked on the given discrepant event the right way, but sometimes they cannot reach to the conclusion as they are trying the first time, or they are very new, or they are beginners in that particular process. So it is also your duty to help them arrive at explanations, because this is what is the role of a teacher as a facilitator or as a guide in this particular model. So these were some of the points related to teachers' role in inquiry training model. Now we'll focus on what role the students need to play while they are participating in an inquiry training process. First one is to find out the discrepancy from the problems. So first thing the students would do is understand the problem when it's posed by the teacher, so that they would spend some time finding out what exactly is different or difficult in a given situation, and accordingly they could go ahead. Second one is to probe in the problem by asking pinpoint questions. So the students are supposed to ask questions associated with that particular discrepant event or a puzzling situation that will be posed in front of them by the teacher. So they need to get involved in the problem and ask questions which are very specific. Then they're supposed to go for experimentation if it has anything to do with experiments, or if it is something that requires your literature review, or something that requires the students to read books accordingly. So the term experimentation is used in a general manner, wherein the students would experiment with their thoughts. The experimentation does not only mean with the apparatus or the devices in the lab, but in a general context, where the students are supposed to understand the given concept by working on it, maybe by reading about it, or talking about it to the experts and so on. Fourth one is to gather data and arrange it logically to give different possible explanations. As when a discrepant event will be posed in front of the students are supposed to go about it and identify what exactly is the discrepancy in the event, or what exactly is that puzzle which the teacher has posed to them, and find an answer to that. Okay, and sometimes students do it very well. So a part of that process is to gather the data, which they have to do again very logically and sequentially. And also after gathering the data, they are supposed to arrange it logically so that they can give a proper explanation about it to the teacher, so that the teacher would get convinced with the process or the research that they have done about the given discrepant event. So these were some of the roles the students need to play. while they are undergoing the inquiry training process. So in a way, these points that we have discussed, they talk about what is the role of a teacher and the role of a student in a classroom, and what are the expectations from them during an inquiry training process. Moving ahead, let us see the third aspect in association with this particular model, that is principles of reaction. So the first point in principles of reaction is, during the second phase, the teacher's task is to help the students to inquire using questions that invite an answer, either yes or no. So here the teacher is supposed to help the students to inquire about the given descriptive event or the event which is posed by the teacher in front of them by asking questions which would have an answer either yes or no. So the students are only supposed to ask questions. Say suppose if I take an example, if a teacher has posed a descriptive event associated with litmus paper, for example, uh, then uh, and maybe it can be like if a teacher has conducted an experiment. So it will not always be a narration. It can also be an experiment where you keep two solutions in front of them and make use of litmus paper, and you just put that litmus paper in the water and the given solution A and B, and show them the change that is occurred in the litmus paper. And after doing or showing that event to them, the demonstration to them, which is a puzzling situation because they know nothing about uh, the concept of acid and bases. So you need to encourage them to ask questions about that given experiment, which would elicit an answer either yes or no. Like, for example, the students would make an attempt to ask a question like, is it because of the paper? Because there'll be two papers, litmus papers that the teacher would use. So the teacher would say no. Then the next question can be, is it because of the solution? Okay. Then the teacher would say yes. Then like that. So such questions. So these questions will basically guide the students to go and inquire about the solution, inquire about the problem in a particular direction. So like this, questions should be encouraged by the teacher in the classroom. The second point is, if at all any student asks a question that cannot be answered by yes or no, okay, or he or she must ask the question, okay, so the teacher must ask the question, must ask the students to rephrase the question. So sometimes it so happens that the students are not very familiar with the process of inquiry training model. So if at all any student asks a question that cannot be answered with yes or no, then you need to tell the students to rephrase the question so that the answer can be only given in yes or no. The third point is that the teacher provides a free intellectual environment to the students. So we are supposed to provide them the free intellectual environment because they need to be comfortable while doing the process, and if they are not, they won't be able to ask questions to you. So you need to be very approachable and very free with them while the process is going on. Teacher guides students to give clear statements for theory and generalization. So the teacher's role is also to guide the student to give a clear statement for whatever theory that they come about, that given or the presented descriptive event or a puzzling situation. And they also, as you know, that they have to also generalize what they say. So it is very important that that guidance, so it's basically the explanation of whatever work they have done regarding the descriptive event. The teacher's role is also to guide them. So same point we have discussed earlier. It is just that it is put in a different way. And we know that what the principles of reaction is. So it's basically how a teacher is supposed to respond and how students are supposed to respond. So it's basically the reactions which would happen or the responses that would come from both the ends during the inquiry process are covered in this particular point of principles of reaction. So we'll discuss few more points related to inquiry training model in our next lecture. So if you have any queries related to the points that we discussed regarding the social system, where we saw teachers' role and students' role, and few points about principles of reaction, please feel free to ask it in the chat box.